Happy, beautiful day. It is Pete Cohen, and welcome to the Pete Cohen podcast. This is episode 2 in a series of 4 podcasts on how to thrive in challenging times. Today's podcast is called Thriving Blindness. I'll see you after the theme tune. The big question today is, how are some people living extraordinary lives with an abundance of health, wealth, and happiness? What exactly are these people doing? The award-winning My365 podcast will give you the answers as you go from living a life by chance to an extraordinary life by design. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another podcast. I'm excited to deliver some great content, some ideas. We know that people don't change when we tell people what to do. People change when their perspective changes. And I think what's going on in the world has massively given people a different perspective of things. So these podcasts, these 4, is really about how to thrive in challenging times. And I think often people need a bit of help because they're not used to being in situations like this. And what I'm going to say today, I believe it might be quite hard hitting, but I really believe that what I'm going to say is hugely important. In the podcast before, I started talking about courage. And courage is something that we can all do. I want to explore that in a little bit more detail today, because I think when we talk about thriving blindness, what I mean by that is I think many of us don't actually just realize, we don't see what we're capable of. We're blind to, I mentioned a quote by Mark Twain that said, if you're comfortably going with the majority, you see that you're with the majority, just stop, pause and look back and think, well, is this the right way to go? We know that many of the people who are unfortunate enough to have passed away from this virus had underlying health conditions. Many people are blind to the fact of what they can actually do to improve their immune systems. And then there are people who are they're not blind to it. They know it, but they don't actually do anything about it. And I think part of that is we live in a world where most of us are detached from ownership. We're detached from something bigger than ourselves. And I've mentioned this probably on every podcast. The greatest question we should be asking ourselves, the most courageous question we should be asking ourselves, or it really should be the most natural question that we ask ourselves is, what can I do for others? So in order to thrive in challenging times, we have to just open our mind to the fact of, hey, I thought I was in control. Can you imagine the amount of people all around the world who thought they were in control? I'm one of those people. I actually thought, hey, we had just turned a massive corner with our business, or we have a number of businesses, but 2 of our businesses, we really thought we had turned a big corner. We'd invested heavily into improving certain aspects of what we do. That's my speaking business and another business that we have. And within moments, everything changed. All the work was canceled for those 2 businesses. And you know what? I thought we were in control. How many people do you think there are in the world right now who thought something, and what they thought wrong because they're not in control? Because all of a sudden, what's happened? What's happened in the world? What's happened to people's jobs? What's happened to people's investments? I mean, who knows how this is all going to play out? But let's just be brutally honest here. There's never been a time in our lifetime, maybe in the history of man, that you've been chosen to, well, that's if you choose to look at it like that. The fact is, you're living here today where this virus has affected every corner of the world. There's never been a time where there's been more people that are aware of something. I was doing a Zoom call yesterday with people who are in another one of my businesses, which was fantastic. The enthusiasm that you see from people, but because they feel they're connected to something. And we had people from all over the world who are having the courage to step forwards. See, we think we're in control, but really we're not. We're not in control. But, contradiction, what are you in control of? I think the thing that we're all in control of is how we feel and how we react. And yesterday I mentioned, I recorded the podcast yesterday, but you won't be listening to it yesterday, or you might be listening to it yesterday. I talked about the different activation systems, the different motivation activation systems that we have in the first podcast around we have this ability to run away from danger because we think our life is under threat, but we also have this system of stepping forwards into something and doing something. And in many cases, when we do that, we do something courageous. So I really want to explore to you how there are two types of courage. There's the general courage that you see people do incredible things. Perhaps it's not general, but let's just look at it as something that many people have done, from someone who is a soldier that is run into fire from the enemy to go and save someone, a courageous act where they've been rewarded for that. But at the time they did that's what they had trained for. And again, just a slight aside, why we train. I train every day, mentally, physically, emotionally, and it's quite boring, maybe what I do, getting up at a certain time, working on my journal. I have a journal, a journal that we get all of our people that we coach to use. I meditate, I exercise, I learn, I grow, I evolve. And the reason I do that, apart from it feels good to do it every day, I do it because I was training for something like this. Whether it was ever going to happen or not, I was not going to leave it to just circumstance. This is why we train. And if there's one thing that you could take away from all of this, it's the courage to train mentally, physically, emotionally, and not be blind to the importance of that, and not to be blind to the fact that you might not feel like doing something. But, if you're a fireman or you're a soldier, if you don't train, then when battle comes, you're not just putting yourself at a position of vulnerability, but you're putting everyone around you in a position of vulnerability. And that's what's happened in the world. Do you know how many people, I know this is quite close to the mark because it's not always people's fault that they get sick. But I think many people are blind to what they're doing today and how that's going to affect their tomorrow. From how they think, definitely from what they eat, how they move. How many people would have died of this virus if they'd had stronger immune systems? So when we talk about blindness, let's talk about the blindness of the fact of what your immune system does. Like I say, I'm not a doctor, but my background, I have a degree in sports science, and I've always been interested in physiology. I've always been interested in the body. How do you make the body work better? Well, there's many ways, but you know what? You probably don't feel like doing them because there's no necessity to act. If you don't have a necessity to act, you won't act. You just act out of necessity, and necessity often comes through trauma, diagnosis, prognosis, in some cases. So with your immune system, what does your immune system do? Well, it does many things. But one of the things it does, it's there to basically keep you alive. So if something is wrong with your body, your immune system is working overtime to get your body to work the way it can work. That makes sense, right? Just remember the last time you were ill or you had a cold, your body is working hard, or a fever. A fever is your body's way of raising its core temperature to fight off infection. So if you've got 2 or 3 underlying health conditions, there's a lot going on inside your body for your body to try and repair itself. And if you keep repeating the behaviors that are associated with the illness in the first place, stress, worry, what you eat, not moving, your body's just, I'm not going to say the F word, but it's not in a good place. And then if all of a sudden a powerful virus comes into your body sees that as an alien. It shouldn't be there. So it raises your body temperature to give you a fever. Heat is what kills off viruses. And of course, if your body is already screwed because it's challenged, what happens? That's what kills people. And if you're blind to the fact of what could I do for my immune system, and I'm calling you out, that's the sort of person I am. Do you want to be stronger? Now we can make up a whole load of excuses for this, but you have to be courageous, and that's personal courage. And that's what I want to look at, because everyone is different. But the general courage is the person, as I said, who goes into enemy fire to save someone. The person who jumps into a burning building to rescue their child. I heard this incredibly courageous story of a 9-year-old in China. In 2008, there was a huge earthquake which killed 69,000 people. And loads of schools, the buildings collapsed and children died. And there's this one child who actually then in 2008 with the Olympics led China because he became a symbol of courage. He was the hall monitor And he went in to save two of his classmates. He bought them out and saved himself. And that was a general act of kindness. Sorry, it was a heroic. It was very kind. It was a heroic act. And we all have the capacity to do that. And that's what many people are doing right now in the world. Even though they're locked down in their house, many people are still thinking, what can I do for others? I heard a heroic story yesterday of one of the people who I coach who's been just helping others, getting on the phone, speaking to people. And I say this, again, I believe that when your perspective changes of things, you can look at things differently, and then you can act differently. You feel differently about the situation. If people weren't dying, I think a lot of people would be celebrating, and some would be celebrating the fact that they don't have to go to work, but some people would be celebrating just a new opportunity. And my podcast got into the top 10, and I was happy about that. But at the same time, I thought, well, I can't celebrate because people are dying right now. I think more people are listening to my podcast because people's mental health is struggling because they're lost. They don't have anything to hold on to. But thriving, really, as I mentioned in the previous podcast, comes from the Scandinavian word of holding on to something. What are you holding on to? See, one of the things which is amazing right now is there's less planes in the sky. There seems to be a calmness and a stillness. It's almost like Mother Earth is happy with us. You think of all of the bushfires that happened, the ridiculous weather we had here in the UK. Who knows? Maybe the Earth was trying to tell us to wake up and stop and sit back. Whether that's true or not, that's not really the point for me. It's just, well, what this has forced me to do, and many, is to step back and reevaluate. And don't be blind to the fact that the only thing that exists in front of you isn't necessarily doom and gloom. What exists in front of us is possibility. Possibility to change, possibility to make a difference, and possibility to be courageous. So I'm sure you understand the general acts that people all over the world have done and will do. And maybe you've done some of those things. But then there's also personal courage. And this is the thing I'm really interested in. People who face something that's difficult. In my DNA, I can't help myself. I've helped many people. In the book I wrote years ago called Fear Busting, the person I wrote it with came up with this brilliant idea of, let's interview lots of the people that you've helped to find out from their perspective. Because I think sometimes when you hear the stories of other people, it's really powerful. It gives you a new perspective. You relate to that person. And there's been so many people I know. I worked with a woman who won a villa I'm sure she listens to the podcast. She won a villa in Spain on a breakfast television program. But then remembered that she's phobic of flying, frightened of flying, doesn't want to get on a plane. But boy, did she have an incentive to overcome it. She just won a villa in Spain. But it still wasn't easy. She had to face a fear. Or another lady that's probably listening to this has had a fear of what some people would call agoraphobia, not wanting to go out, frightened of having anxiety. Again, amazing, courageous story that she let me help her. She decided to face something that in most cases is just an illusion of the mind. It's not really real. It just seems real. And we all have this incredible opportunity right now to be heroic. We have this incredible opportunity to practice general acts of courage, but also personal acts of courage. And I want you to really consider what you want the legacy of COVID-19 to be, of the coronavirus. What do you want to happen on the back of it? Because what needs to happen is for us to decide, and this is one of the key roles, key elements of this podcast is decide, what role do you want to play? What role do you want to play? Because when you look at superheroes or just heroes in life, they have decided to take on a role. So Bruce Wayne is Batman, Clark Kent is Superman, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. They've taken on a role. I remember, I don't know if any of you remember the Batman series, probably most of you won't, that was in the 70s and 80s with, I can't even remember the actor's name, even though I can picture him. He's one of the voices in not South Park, Family Guy. Bruce Wayne is, I can't remember his name anyway. It's not, I'm sure it will come into my brain any moment. Adam West, there you go. Which was a fantastic program. It was actually a bit of satire. They were actually making fun of the establishment a little bit, but I didn't know that when I was watching it as a child. But it's when the phone rang that Batman and Robin, because everyone needs a Robin, right? I've got a few Robins in my life, and not just the Robin in the garden. I'm talking about Robins who help you in your mission and your goal, because it's very hard to do this on your own. And that's why the superhero films that are so popular right now is when superheroes come together. Please understand, the most heroic thing that you can do in this life right now is to recognize the general acts of courage that you can do, but then also the personal acts that you can do to improve your life and improve the life of others. Because science has shown we are other directed. We are people focused. We are at our best when we are doing things for others. But what I loved about that Batman thing is when the red phone rang. The red phone rang. They got to phone up Batman, and Batman would be in his Batcave with Robin, and it would ring and it would flash red. And it was like, that's because there's something for them to do. There's a role that they had to play. And that's what I'm asking you to do, to decide what that role is going to be. And this is one of the things I'm doing with people, you know, in the war effort, because there is a war going on here. I really do believe there is a war, an economical war, where most of us are going to have to really look at things differently, a war for our health. And if you want help in that, I'll help you. I will get on the phone with you. You know, I've been doing it. It's a lot recently because I want to have that call with you, like hero training. What's the role you're going to play? How can you navigate through all of this? If you want to take advantage of that, just go to coaching.petecohen.com, coaching.petecohen.com. Watch the video that's on there on the back of it. You get access to my calendar. Let's go on a call. Let's talk, you and I. Go on, I dare you. I'm not joking. It's just every one person that decides to do this, it can make a huge difference in deciding on where your focus is and helping you recognize what are the steps to bring that heroic you forwards. I say this every day pretty much. A great life doesn't happen by chance. It happens by design. One of the best ways to design it is to decide the role and the goals that you need in order to bring yourself forwards. And courageous acts, personal courageous acts, are very simple things. But we just don't feel like doing them, right? The courageous act of exercising every day, even if you can say, well, I can't go to the gym. Or does that mean you still can't exercise? I know people that live in one-bedroom flats that I've been seeing on Instagram and who've still been exercising and finding a way to move, because when we move, we secrete, our molecules are secreted from our muscles. Our muscles secrete molecules that are associated with hope. We need to be hopeful. Hopeful is what? It's a feeling that the future is better than where we are. We will get through this. We will get through this. We will. There's something better for you. And even if it's not for you, be better for your children or your children's children. That's the most courageous thing that we can do. My dad was a fanatic of the First World War. And the conditions of the First World War were pretty crazy. People living in trenches, living in mud, living around rats, living in just the most crazy conditions, all different temperatures. And that was the role that they had chosen. Your country, in fact, many of them didn't have a choice, right? But they still chose the role in many cases. And sometimes when people got shot, they were taken to hospitals, but they felt compelled to act, compelled to go back to be with their comrades because that was their role. We are not in control of our life, or many aspects we are not in control. What do we control? Let's control those things. We can control how we think and how we feel. And to be courageous is to stop making this about you. Stop being the victim of your own movie and be the hero of your own movie, if you want to be. It's just life tastes a little bit better when that's what we decide to do. Why do we love heroes? We identify with them. Let's drive down our fear and drive up our courage. Let's stop being blind to possibility. Many people were blind to the fact of economically, they're fine. They've got savings, they've got investments. Many people's investments have just, maybe that will change. Many people are blind to that. Many people are blind to the fact of the difference they can make to somebody else just by reaching out to them. Say, hey, how are you? Is there anything I can do for you? I want to help. What about you? I think many of us are blind to what happiness really is, or what joy is. Take a few minutes, take a few moments every day. Get up before everyone else, if you can, and find a few moments of quietness. And in that quietness and in that stillness, ask yourself that question. From Martin Luther King. What can you do for others? And what could you do for yourself that would make you even better at doing things for others? What's the role that you're going to play? How you see yourself is probably an illusion. I don't know if you're like a lot of people who, when they look at themselves, they don't like what they see. But in times of situations like this, for many, how they thought about themselves just is not important. The necessity to act is here. And even though many of us are being forced into a position of where we're having to be a bit passive because we necessarily can't go out, we can still do stuff. People look at what I did many years ago, and it's by the time you listen to this podcast, it would have been 9 years ago since my wife underwent however long, 7-8 hours of an operation on her brain when she was given 18 months to live. And I never forget when the doctor came upstairs to basically tell her that she was going down into the operating theatre. And I hadn't been we weren't married at that time. I hadn't been with her for very long. But my role, I didn't think about that. And I think she knows this. I didn't think I'd end up marrying her. I liked her. I was very keen on her, but I wasn't the marrying type. But the massive epileptic fit that she had and the vulnerability that she felt, I just stepped into the role. I didn't even think about it. This is what I was here to do. And I have to tell you this because I think it's important, and I appreciate you listening to this like you wouldn't believe. I know what people are capable of. On the day of the operation at the Royal Free Hospital in North London, the doctor came up and said, okay, this is what's going to happen and we're going to take Hannah down. He left and Hannah just looked at me and said, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go down and have this surgery. She knew what was going to happen. She knew they were going to wake her up in the surgery to talk to her because of where the brain tumor was. It was right where the language sensors are. And they woke her up and when her language started to change and she started to slur, they stopped. They couldn't take out all of the tumor and they put her back together again, which was amazing. And they were some of the longest hours of my life. Now, people might look at what I did and say, wow, that was amazing. I did what I had to do. I did what I had to do. I did what I had to do. What do you have to do? Or what do you get to do? What's possible for you? And what people often don't realize, and it's not important really, but I'll tell you anyway, is when she was diagnosed and when I spoke to my coach, who I actually called when I was in the car park of that hospital and asked him what to do. And he said, find people that are still alive, find out why, and ask Hannah what she's going to do when she gets better. If you know me, you've heard that story before. But I want to tell you something that I don't often talk about. First, I probably wouldn't have worked that out on my own. I'm not clever enough. I'm not stupid enough to realize I need help. And many of us need help. Many of us need to be in an environment. And I'm going to tell you this. If you're not getting coached, now is the time. Now is the time. You need help. We all need help. You could do great things on your own, but it's much easier to do great things when you're being helped by other people or being supported by other people. And maybe I could be that person. Maybe the community that I have. If you're someone who wants to achieve and wants to move forwards and wants to make a difference, then just let me know, because I'm looking for people like you. But the reason I'm telling you this is you wouldn't believe, or maybe you would, the obstacles that I went through to get my wife to have this treatment in America, the $250,000 that it cost, the finding a doctor in the United Kingdom that would oversee the treatment. I must have spoken to 50 doctors and they all said, no, we don't want anything to do with it. This guy's dangerous that Hannah was going to be treated by. It's not proven. People not wanting to step up, not wanting to step out, not wanting to step out of, well, I don't really care what other doctors think about me. This life is really important. Then I found one doctor, Dr. Lawrence Buckman, who was actually chair of the GP Association in England a few years ago, and he became the hero. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is I didn't do this on my own. I didn't take Hannah, I went with her, but she got on the plane. She had the courage to go to another country. She had the courage to believe in another doctor. She had the courage to do the treatment. She had the courage to change her diet. I had the courage to overcome so many obstacles. You wouldn't believe it. I've probably forgotten half of them, day in, day out. And then I had all of these trolls and all of these other people, professional people telling me, don't do it, don't do it. But I knew in my heart, I knew in my soul what it is I needed to do. What do you need to do? What's there that needs to come out? This is one of the reasons I believe so many people are struggling mentally. They're not moving forwards. They're just existing. And we could all say, well, that's because of X. Maybe. Maybe not. If you want to thrive in challenging times, stop being blind to what is possible. Stop being blind to what you can do. I believe in you, even if I've never met you. I believe in human beings. I believe that the future is unwritten and we have the power to change. So, in summary, what was your biggest takeaway from this podcast today? Was it the two types of courage? The general courage of what heroic acts that people do? The personal courage of what you could do every single day to improve yourself, from exercising to meditating to doing things that maybe are a little bit challenging to you, a bit scary, and get good at strengthening your courageous muscle and feeling good about doing the things that you didn't feel like doing, but you felt better for having done them. What is the role that you're going to play? I'd love to know. One of my great friends and one of my Robin, if you like, Kate Carruth, who will be listening to this before everybody else because she will write a blog post based on the back of this. So, Kate, I know you'll be listening to this, but you said something really amazing to me recently. I said on a broadcast that what if you were chosen to be here at this time? So if you were chosen to be here in this time, you wouldn't moan and complain about it. You just say, well, this is it. This is where I am. What am I going to do about it? I want to go down in history. I think we all want to go down in history in some way. But you know what? This sounds like a cliche. It's not about going down in history. It's creating history. And just going back to Kate, again, someone who had the courage to leave her job and step into what she loves to do, which is to be a Robin to people's Batman, to help people alchemize what they have to say, their words. Everyone needs help. And she's helped me help you in ways maybe you don't even know. What's the role that you're going to play? I want to say a massive thank you to all of you that listen to this podcast. You can make a huge difference by telling people about it. So, hey, listen to this. What do you reckon? Give people something to listen to that makes them think. Because it's only when we think differently and we see things differently that we will act differently. If I can help you, let me know. Check out our private Facebook group, Pete Cohen Coaching. It's private, but it's free. Just go and check it out. And I really, really, really appreciate you listening to this today. Much love to you and your family and to every single person that they know. They need you to stop being blind to thriving and being the best version of yourself. Take care. Much love. Thanks for listening. And if you want to go from living a life by chance to an extraordinary life by design, so you have the health, wealth, and abundance that you're looking for, then make sure you join our Facebook group, My365 Kickstart, for additional tools, tips, techniques, and inspiration to help you go from where you are to where you want to be. Take care, and thanks for listening.